Hello and welcome to another episode of the Backlot Box Office bonus episode.
You got it right.
First
Yes.
try. All right. So yes, we are bringing you yet another bonus episode here where we just like to talk random crap that's usually somewhat kind of related to what we're talking about when we talk about the box office that we did yesterday. This week here, what did you decide that we should do this week here, Derek?
So every month, I try to put together one episode that ties into the topic that you guys are talking about on the main show. And January, of course, on the show is Crime Month. We're getting
True
into
Crime Month.
yes, where you're talking about a number of movies with dark and scintillating subject matter. So I decided, well, what can we do in the true crime mode for box office? And as I was doing my research, the definition of true crime is going to be very loose in the
Okay.
sense that it's not going to be necessarily the type of stuff you guys have been talking about, but it's movies that are based on true stories and do involve crime of some sort. Probably not
Okay.
necessarily murder, although there is some mob stuff in here, so it kind of will flirt with that. But there are a wide variety of things we're going to talk about here in terms of like stuff that actually was real life criminal activity that actually managed to make money at the box office.
Mhm.
So this will be wild. I'll just warn
Well,
you.
and you do bring up a very valid point, though, in terms of what we were doing on the main show and what we deemed as the true crime that we were going to be talking about this month.
Yep.
Everything that we basically talking about this month was, oh, our true crime had our we had a through line, and that was murder.
Yes.
Just goes to show, you know what? Not all crime is murder, and
Nope.
they do make movies about said things.
It's kind of like the Purge, where they talk about like all crime is legal, but we
Hmm.
really want to emphasize the murder part when you
Yeah,
have the
right.
Purge.
Yeah.
That's the funny part about it. So
No,
that's always kind of the comical point of like, if the Purge is going on, would I like rob a bank because it's legal at that point, or do like like tax fraud or some other exciting stuff like that because that's all legal, and I don't have
yeah,
to even risk going out to kill people. So
yeah.
there you go.
At that point, you just go onto the internet. All
Exactly.
right. You
I'm
bring up.
getting on Napster.
Hey, it wasn't illegal when I downloaded that music that day. Uh, you bring up a very
Oh, here's
valid point.
Metallica.
You bring up a very valid point, and now I know what the topic of the next Purge movie needs to be.
Yes, yes.
Cybersecurity. All right. So going into this week's, we have the top true crime movies at the box office. And I did take a small little peek here. That's why I was actually kind of fascinated and excited to talk about this week because, like you said, not all of this is about murder.
Nope.
Because including, the very one we get at number one is the Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio movie Catch Me If You Can, coming in $164.62 million. Because honestly, I mean, you put Leo and Hanks in a movie and it's going to make money. That's how that works. Um, but this is actually a very fun movie to watch, and it's very. I wouldn't necessarily say it's loosely based. They take a lot of creative license with this, but
Yep.
it's a fun movie.
Yeah, I mean, again, first off with the true crime thing, I mean, again, it is kind of funny that, the most successful instance of true crime at the box office that we're talking about is check fraud, which, that guy actually did. And
Uh
he
huh.
actually parlayed that into an actual career where he did, security stuff and other check fraud stuff for other companies. But you're right. It was a perfect timing because, again, this is like a Christmas Day movie. Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, they had already worked together in stuff like Saving Private Ryan. So they have a relationship. Leo DiCaprio, he's still hot and on fire. This is only 5 years removed from Titanic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just a really fun, really entertaining movie, very light, very jazzy. So you can kind of see why this movie is very different from much of the other stuff we're going to be talking about, and that what makes it such a crowd pleasing success.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, when it popped up, I'm like, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I think even 20 years later, I think that if this movie was made with the same cast, I think it would do just as well.
Yeah, yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah. Coming in at number two, American Gangster, $130.16 million. Uh, I mean, again, this is one of those ones where I think part of it is its cast, especially in '07.
Yep.
Um, you know, Denzel Washington is on a it's I mean he's a box office draw to begin with, but if you're
Yeah.
talking the late hundreds, it was a big deal. So, um, you know, again, one I'm not kind of surprised, and again, a kind of a fascinating. You're gonna have to give me a little bit more on this one here because
Yeah.
in terms of American Gangster, myself personally, I get all
Yeah.
my knowledge from the Jay Z album that came out accompany this, but that's about it.
That's fair. Again, this is the first of our many mob and, crime community movies, because Denzel is playing like an actual Harlem crime lord, Frank Lucas in this movie. You know, kind of what we were talking about with the star power of Hanks and DiCaprio.
Hmm.
This was sold on like, we've got Denzel as
Hmm.
the mob guy, and we've got Russell Crowe as the guy hunting him down, and they really hyped up that pairing. Like, these guys are together. Again, this is Ridley Scott, back when he's still like knocking out a movie a year,
Hmm.
all these expensive historical epics. So the guy just doesn't slow down. And again, it was a big success. Again, you mentioned it had the big tie-in soundtrack, back when, that was tapering off, but was still kind of a thing when you willed it to be. So yeah, a very popular movie.
Oh yeah. It's one of those ones where I always wanted to see it, but I never got around to, and I've heard really good things about it, so I can't exactly argue that.
Yeah, I mean it's a durable hit. It holds up. It's very serviceable, and again, just it is well done. Very
Yeah.
70s ish. So
Yeah. Coming in at number three, if memory serves me correctly, the Guinness World Record holding film Wolf of Wall Street at $116.9 million. Um, my understanding is that this Scorsese film holds the Guinness World Record for the amount of f bombs dropped in a single movie, with over
yeah,
like 530 or something like that.
yeah, that's probably not surprising. Again, it kind of helps when your movie is a full 3 hours to begin with.
Yep.
This is a movie that is very indulgent on a lot of fronts, and strong language is only one of those facets. But again, yeah, I mean, it's funny because we were talking about like, Catch Me If You Can. That's a Christmas Day release for the entire family, and The
Hmm.
Wolf of Wall Street was also a Christmas Day release. And I distinctly remember going to the Century 14. I think this was the day after Christmas. Finally going to see it. I go up to the box. I'm like, one for The Wolf of Wall Street, and something happened that never happened. That has never happened with me there before, which is that the guy at the ticket counter was like, just so you're aware, The Wolf of Wall Street contains strong language, sexual situations, nudity, violence, etc. And I also got the impression that the people who showed up at the theater on Christmas Day to see this movie did not expect this, and that
Hmm.
caused a little bit of an uproar. But yeah, despite all that stuff, it still made a lot of money because again, you can never really bet against Leonardo DiCaprio. And this is a
Right.
very fun, very showy, very funny role. One that we don't really get to see DiCaprio in that much.
Yeah.
So when he does get to put on the jokes, it can be uproarious, as this
Yeah.
movie certainly showed.
Oh yeah, I agree. There's something about Leonardo DiCaprio, like once him and Scorsese started working together, they just make gold. There's just something about the chemistry of those two that just seems to work. Um, but yeah, I remember that about the Wolf of Wall Street, like literally having like signs taped to the walls and stuff like that at the theater to be like, because I just picture like that first group of like the elderly couple that's like, oh, I love Leo. It's the guy from Titanic. We should go see his movie. What just happened? uh, it was a great movie. That's what just happened. That gave me my introduction to Margot Robbie. So
Yep.
I will take it. Coming in at number four, we have the Johnny Depp led Public Enemies, $97.1 million. Um, One thing I will say, I mean, just I had to pull up Public Enemies here because I mean, I want to say one thing that I think is kind of um giving us me a little bit feel is the fact that all these high dollar movies that are coming, we're finally underneath 100 million for our number four, but they're by directors that have a little bit of a notoriety to them and
Yep.
whatnot, to the point where I think it's not only the star power that's bringing them in, but it's also the director who's bringing them in, because I looked this one up and I had forgot this is a Michael Mann movie. So um
Yep.
I'm starting, again, it's one of those things. I'm starting to see a little bit of the trend because, if you're talking, like you said, Spielberg and Scott and Scorsese, I mean, again, these are good names to have behind your movies.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that was kind of part of the marketing at that point, was like, you've seen Michael Mann do these shootouts with Heat and Collateral. So what do you
Hmm.
do when you take this to, like, the 1930s and see what he does there?
Right.
And again, there was the star wattage too, because again, it was Johnny Depp, playing John Dillinger, but you also have Christian Bale in here. This is like, I want to think, no, this wasn't, because this is the summer after The Dark Knight. That was
Yes.
when he had both Public Enemies and Terminator Salvation.
Yes.
So like, this was like him finally becoming like a true A-list star. We're gonna make big movies and market the heck out of them with his presence. So
Now, of all the stuff that we've talked about here, is this the first movie that we've talked about that has had a Sioux Falls reference to it?
I am pretty sure, yes. I
I
know
just, I,
exactly what you're talking about, and certainly when that came up, when I saw that in the theater, I'm like, that is awesome. I think I was. I'm trying to recall if I was waiting for it because I knew about this. I believe I knew about the Sioux Falls Dillinger connection,
hmm
but I was just so happy to see it actually play out in the movie, which was awesome. But yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Now, I do remember when I saw this movie in the theaters that the first thing when they came across that part when they're in Sioux Falls during the bank robbery, and clearly and obviously the geography of downtown has changed since Dillinger hit was in Sioux Falls and whatnot. But I immediately was like, "There's no T intersection in downtown. Where this scene that this isn't right." So obviously this wasn't filmed here.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also a weird thing because like Michael Mann is a director who does like very intense research for his
Hmm.
movies. I mean, like last week when we were talking about the announcement of the Heat 2 novel, and they even
Yeah.
made note of like Michael Mann did so much research in the preparation for this novel, like going to like shooting ranges and studying criminals and all that stuff. So a part of me, to your point, there's a part of me that would have hoped like for the budget that he's probably commanding for a movie like this, he probably could have,
Just
had
come
some
here.
historical accuracy about the Sioux Falls downtown landscape. But that's just me.
Yeah, right. I agree. I agree. Coming in at number five is The Untouchables, $76.27 million. Um, Clearly would probably be $100 million movie if it had come out even 10 years later than that, just simply because this is 1987. But again, more the star power thing. That it almost feels like it's more of the stars that are driving it more than the actual like true crime stories behind them.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, we kind of discussed this a little bit when this came up in our list in our De Palma episode.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you had Kevin Costner again, just starting to emerge as a new screen figure. Again, Sean Connery, make coming back in a role that won him an Oscar. Robert De Niro as Al Capone. Andy Garcia kind of also starting to rise up at that point. So yeah, definitely no lack of stars. And again, the De Palma style really elevated it as well on top of that. So
All of a sudden, you said Andy Garcia. I didn't even realize he was even in that, because
yep, he is.
that was the oh wow, that was the year. He really would have been relatively unknown back then, because I remember what made me think of it, and I looked up, was his he's also in Stand and Deliver, and
Yes.
he's just this young looking Andy Garcia. I'm like, This
Hmm.
came out before that, so wow.
The
Okay.
more you know, more you
The
know.
more the more I know. All right. So coming in at number 6, um, the Johnny Depp led Black Mass, $62.88 million. You have to give me a little bit of insight on this one. This, for me, Black Mass was one of those ones where I wasn't so sure. By then, you're kind of getting kind of bored of Johnny Depp because, by now we're doing a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean and all this stuff and whatnot. And I never got around to this one.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a trudge of a movie. Um, it's from Scott Cooper, the guy who did like Crazy Heart, the movie that Jeff Bridges won his Oscar for. The guy who
Hmm.
most recently did Antlers, which is another very much of a slow burn movie. But this is Johnny Depp as Whitey Bulger. This is the one that he's noted for, like he, really went into the makeup for this. He's got the receding hairline and he
Yep.
looks like crap. And it was like, you know, part, again, you're not wrong in terms of like, we're starting to get sick of Johnny Depp and Johnny Depp kind of doing all these foolish things. I mean, the admirably, this movie does have a stacked cast underneath it because like
Yep.
Benedict Cumberbatch and Kevin Bacon, Jesse Plemons back in the day, Adam Scott. I remember that from back in the day. Corey Stoll, a lot of players in it. To be not to be wrong, and it made a moderate amount of money behind that. But again, we had seen mob stuff with Johnny Depp before. I know like the movie that just missed this top 10, I think number 11 was Donnie Brasco. So Johnny Depp has a lot of presence in these crime stuff, much more than I ever would have thought or realized, but that just seems to be his bread and butter. So who knew?
Right, yeah, if it's not a Disney pirate movie, right? There's the second notch for Johnny Depp. Because yeah, if Johnny Brasco is coming in number 11, just goes to show that I didn't think we would be talking about Johnny Depp as much as we are, considering the fact that number 7, Blow,
Yep.
is also a Johnny Depp movie, coming in
Yep.
$52.99 million, with him and Penelope Cruz. Um, I love Blow. I think it's a great movie. There's a one specific scene that I just gets me every time, just because I heard a backstory in regards to it. Um, Something about Penelope Cruz in this movie just annoys me. I don't not saying that she's a horrible actress, but there's just something about her in this movie. Just I don't know. I just can't put my pin on it. Um, but I will say in terms of Blow, I got to see Bobcat Goldthwait do a stand up once, and he talks about the scene between him and Paul Rubens and Johnny Depp standing in front of a great big tray of cocaine, and he's like, "Who greenlit this when you got 3 ex-convicts doing drugs on screen?" Um,
Yep.
so um, I I kind of wish this would be kind of higher up, but I also get that Blow is not your like run of the mill, like this is the movie that we would want to talk about kind of thing, or
Yeah, I
go
mean,
see for that matter.
it's held up pretty well. It's kind of endured on home video in
Hmm.
the decades since. I remember it personally as the movie, because like that advertising campaign, they used Black Betty in all the ads, and they really ran that into the ground. But I was okay with that as a high schooler back in the day. Um, yeah, and also stuff like the Paul Rubens scenes. Like, hey, is Pee Wee Herman on screen again? That rarely happens. So hooray for that too. So
Hey, based on what he got in trouble for, there's far worse things you can get in trouble with. I'm just saying.
yep,
Um,
yep.
and I will never. I will always have a special place in my heart for Paul Rubens in movies after him being in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yep.
All right, so coming in at number 8, again, as we talk about big directors making big movies, this is probably one of the smallest movies he's made. Pain and Gain coming at $49.88 million by Michael Bay, doing a action comedy that didn't make $100 million at the box office.
No, I mean, I'm kind of. I mean, well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that it didn't make more money, because again, this is a pretty dark, comedic type of crime movie.
Hmm.
definitely has a sense of humor. He's definitely playing for the weirder elements of the story. It's interesting because again, it's Mark Wahlberg, it's Dwayne Johnson, just as he's kind of starting to make that turn into being the movie star that he is today. I would
Yep.
even argue that The Rock that we know in 2022 probably wouldn't make a movie like Pain and Gain today. At least that's the argument I would make. I think he'd
Maybe.
make a
Yeah, I
lot
could
much
see
safer
that.
stuff. Um, but yeah, this is kind of in that period because I remember this was 2013, and there was a period where The Rock had a movie coming out every month. Because in like February he had Snitch, in
Yep.
March he had GI Joe Retaliation, in April he had Pain and Gain, and in May he had Fast and Furious 6. And I took note of that at that time, and I'm like, man, The Rock is really showering us with his goodness at this point in time. But again, yeah, I mean, but the Pain and Gain again, it's a little bit off brand for Michael Bay. If I recall correctly, he because like Paramount came up to him. I think this was like when they were going to say, "Hey, can you make a fourth Transformers movie?" And Michael Bay was like, "I will make a fourth Transformers movie, but I get to make Pain and Gain first as my condition." Um, and I'm kind of glad he did because it's certainly one of his most eclectic offerings, and I'm glad we
Hmm.
got something to break up the Transformers train and allow him to kind of go wild. So
And that's something I would agree. I get to an extent where you say that 2022 Dwayne Johnson probably wouldn't make a movie like this again. Um, maybe not necessarily as gritty, maybe, but I think he'd still be willing because I mean, especially after kind of poking fun at himself with the Jumanji movies. Um, Sometimes I wish he would go have a little bit more fun and not be so serious because I mean, like, personally myself, I love him in Be Cool. Back when nobody knew who The Rock was outside of the WWE, um, you know, that has got to be one of my favorite roles of his. And some days I kind of wish he would just go back to being I don't care.
yeah, I mean, obviously, The Rock does what The Rock does at this point. I mean, again, he at this point he's basically just going to keep making Jumanji sequels and now Red Notice sequels until things peter out. But yeah, there was that point, especially like back in the Be Cool Southland Tales days, where he was
Hmm.
actually willing to take risk. And even like in this Pain and Gain period where he's still kind of figuring things out. He hasn't fully come back yet, but he's certainly riding that Fast and Furious train
Yep.
to get to that point. Um, this is kind of like that last gasp, but I don't think he's ever going to do something as like certainly as strictly adult as Pain and Gain. Again, this is why I'm going to be very curious, like when Black Adam comes out, because The Rock's always been talking about like, yes, he's this dark comic book character, this anti-hero character, and I'm very curious what line that movie is going to fall on, whether it's going to be like a hero with just a very slight dark side, or if he's going to
Hmm.
be there. I think knowing The Rock, I think it's going to be much more of the former, but we'll see. We'll see in
Yeah.
July.
I will be kind of curious. I'm hoping not to be disappointed with Black Adam is all I can say. All right, coming in at number 9 is the return of Scorsese with Goodfellas at $46.84 million. Um, you know, Unsurprising, that the Scorsese, the New Yorker that he is, likes to play and dabble in the uh, the mobster type movies and whatnot. Um, I would be kind of curious is that if you just put Scorsese, like if we did a top 10 of Scorsese's, all times, whatever, pretty much it's just going to be mobster, 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 occasionally not a mobster.
Yeah, I mean, there are $100 million movies that he's had that have no interest with mobsters, like The Aviator, for one. That made
Hmm.
$100 million, I know. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there are the movies that we've listed here that are mob movies that, in crime movies that are actually based on true stories. But like The Departed, that's a remake of Infernal Affairs, a different
Yep.
movie. Or like Casino, which is a fictionalized version. Like they've changed the names. It's somewhat based on a true story, but also somewhat not. So that didn't really count for this list. But Goodfellas, I mean, this is a well documented case again. Like the real Henry Hill, a real life person who was in the witness protection program after dealing with the mob and stuff like that. I mean, this is full blown a true story. Although again, embellished with all the Scorsese stylistic stuff, and of course, I mean, and again, this movie did successful enough from a financial standpoint, but also from a critical standpoint, where it kind of truly shaped up Scorsese as like the mob guy. Because again, this is the movie that Joe Pesci won his Oscar for, which kind of set up like what we expect on screen of Joe Pesci from
Mm-hmm.
here on out. Again, De Niro, kind of waving down or like the winding down of like the Scorsese De Niro partnership to an extent, before he really commits to working with Leo all the time. So there's that too. Yeah, I mean, it did fine. Again, I think there might have been some hopes that it did better, especially since obviously its reputation has only grown and grown and grown
Yep.
over the years, because people always talk about Goodfellas should have won Best Picture in 1990 and not Dances with Wolves. That was a mistake, Academy, blah, 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 blah. But so be it.
That is a statement that you don't make in South Dakota, because that would be a sword that many people would die on.
Yeah,
Don't
we
you
get
don't
kicked out of
take
the
it.
state.
You don't you don't take away that Best Picture award from our state.
Nope, not at all. So it's what it is.
It is. But you know what? Hey, it's not to say that Goodfellas lost to a bad movie, because I
Yeah,
mean,
Dances with Wolves is fine.
yeah. All right, and then coming in at number 10 is Gangster Squad at $46 million. The part I think is kind of fascinating about this is that, with all of these different, movies that have come in, obviously star-studded cast. Gangster Squad is not, also has its own, cast as well. The part I think kind of funny is that we've talked Spielberg and Scorsese and Michael Bay, all these, names that have a lot of, oomph to them and whatnot for directors and whatnot. And then our number 10 movie comes from the guy that did Zombieland.
Yep. Ruben
Now, it's
Fleischer in
it's
his
not to say he doesn't make movies that don't make a lot of money, but to put Ruben Fleischer in the same likes in the same conversation as somebody like Spielberg and Scorsese.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a little weird career because, again, yeah, he broke out with Zombieland, and I know his follow up to that was 30 Minutes or Less, which is the Jesse Eisenberg Aziz Ansari
Yep.
comedy. And then he makes Gangster Squad, a movie that I know had a little bit of a troubled production because they had to do like extensive reshoots on it. Because there's like one of the like what was supposed to be one of the major set pieces in the movie was like a scene where they're doing like a gangster shootout at a movie theater. And this movie was like a month before that movie was supposed to come out. The Aurora Dark Knight Rises shooting happened. And
Mm,
Warner Brothers like, oh crap, we cannot have that. So they had to
yep.
like delay it 4 months because it was supposed to come out like September 2012. They delayed it 4 months. They reshot it, stuff like that. And then, of course, from there, Ruben Fleischer basically set up shop at Sony because, he did a Zombieland sequel for him. He did the first Venom, obviously didn't do the sequel. And of course, next month, he is doing Uncharted for them. So he'll
That's
keep
right.
coming back.
He is doing Uncharted,
Yep.
which I guess I'm kind of curious. So, but yeah, I mean, he definitely has an interesting career, but still relatively, in respect to people like Spielberg and Scorsese and even Michael Bay for that matter, even though he was in music videos beforehand. It's not like he's in bad company, and you know,
No.
you know, love or hate Venom and whatnot. He makes fun movies,
Yeah.
which is why I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what Uncharted does. Because number one, what two reasons why I want to see Uncharted, be successful is because it's a video game movie, and video game movies don't tend to be successful.
No.
Um, and maybe we'll get another new franchise that we can have a little fun with, that he can have a little bit of fun with and whatnot. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see where we go from here with his career, because like I said, I mean, he's only really been in it for a little over 10 years and whatnot, so he's got a long road ahead of him, and hopefully we'll have a lot of more good things to say about him going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are and obviously again, Gangster Squad had a big cast as well because it's Josh
Hmm.
Brolin, it's Sean Penn. This is the second of the Ryan Gosling Emma Stone team ups after Crazy Stupid Love,
You know,
before La La Land. So this kind of has its footnote in history. You know, if they ever decide to continue that pairing on screen, which they should, because it's really cool. But yeah,
oh,
that's also a fun footnote in it too.
oh, give me any movie that's gonna put Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone together in a movie and whatnot. Their chemistry is just magical. And this is
Yep.
coming from a guy that's never seen La La Land and just going off of just Crazy Stupid Love alone.
Yep. Yep. That is undeniable. So
Anybody who says that they don't like Crazy Stupid Love is wrong.
yeah.
The cast alone is worth it.
Yep.
All right. So that has been our box office bonus episode this week. The top true crime movies at the box office here. Some very interesting things. Clearly, the box office really likes mobsters.
Yeah.
So
Big surprise.
big surprise. There are some movies that I kind of wish would have made it on there in terms of true crime. One of the ones I think of would be like, say, Monster. I've always been a big
Yeah.
fan of Monster. You know, I would be kind of curious as to what kind of movies just didn't quite make the mark.
Yeah, I mean, Monster, Monster is a little bit of a difficult movie. I mean, it had a little bit of a bump, in the Oscar season, and especially when Charlize won the Oscar.
Yep.
But it didn't really go that far. I'm actually going to look it up right now just to see what that movie actually did. That finished at 34.4 million. So
Ooh,
not too far away. And actually, that was a lot better than I thought it did, given how it was received at the time. But yeah,
that it almost feels like, part of it I think is because of story and what we were talking about kind of thing, because like there's certain kind of movies where it just makes more money because it's male led movie kind of thing and whatnot, and you can't have a movie like something like Monster and be like, oh well, it's a female driven story, and so, but
yeah,
you know
yeah. I mean, there was of course also the whole talk at the time of like, you know, look how ugly Charlize looks in this movie. How dare they? Boo! I don't want to see that for that. Which was an actual attitude at the time. I kid you not. So
which is just a sad thing. No, that just means that Charlize Theron did what Charlize Theron needed to do to make the movie as authentic as that they needed to make it, and that's
yeah,
a smart thing to do.
yeah,
But
and she got an Oscar for it. So
exactly. All right. So, what are we looking forward to next week, or are you still in the planning
I
stages?
I know what we're doing next week. So by the time we're doing next week's episode, one of the movies that's going to be coming out that week is Roland Emmerich's latest disaster opus, Moonfall. So
Yes.
I want to do an episode on disaster movies at the box office, where I'm sure we'll talk about a number of Roland Emmerich's other movies, but also all sorts of natural disasters and stuff like that that have happened in movies over the years, because that's just fun stuff to watch. So
So, because of the different kind of disaster movies we've had over the years, I'm guessing you're probably going to have to put some parameters on this. What
yeah,
what
and
what
I'll
are we going to be looking for?
that's what I'm gonna mull over the course of the week. Certainly, like natural disasters will be there, so I'm sure we'll see like Twister in there, or probably a half dozen of these Roland Emmerich movies. To be perfectly honest, who knows? Who knows?
Well, and that's why
Um,
I was going to say is like, does the disaster come from the sky? Does it come from the water? Because there's so you can make a top 10 list out of disaster movies like 5 different ways and have 10 different sets of movies.
I could, and so that'll be my challenge in the week ahead, figuring out those parameters and then listing them out very specifically before we go into that list. I think it'll be a lot of fun regardless. So
That'd be awesome. I cannot wait to see what you've got planned for next week. Um, excuse me. That being said, that has been the bonus episode this week, and we will check you out here next week.
see you then.